All right, hello there again, everybody. So, picking back up with Act 1, now looking at Scene 3. Once again, make sure that you got your uh, personal text of Macbeth with you, pen or pencil highlighter at the ready to take some notes, jot some things down along the way, right here. All right, let's jump right in. So, Scene 3, this is a really important scene. Lots of characters come and go here, and it's really at this point that the main plot of the story kind of gets kicked up into gear, as we'll see. Not in small part due to the fact that this is the scene in which we first meet Macbeth as well. But notice we've got the three witches back on the scene right here. I'm not going to speak to this first conversation too much, except to note that essentially this is just a conversation that reinforces the notion that these witches have extreme supernatural abilities. For example, right here, they're kind of talking about where they're coming from. This first witch tells a little story about a sailor's wife who was munching on some chestnuts, and the witch wanted some. The sailor wife says, "Alright, the witch." She isn't interested in giving this witch anything, and so because this witch is so offended that she doesn't have any chestnuts to snack on, she's basically going to go get her husband, who's a sailor on the other side of the world, in a shipwreck, essentially. And we see that the second witch here is like, well, I'll give thee a wind. The third witch, I give thee another. They have some kind of control over the natural order of things, of nature. That they can control the weather, they can control the wind. Here the witch says, I myself have all the other. I can handle all the rest of this wind. And so then they're interrupted here. A drum within, a drum, Macbeth doth come. And then all the weird sisters, hand in hand, posters of the sea and land, thus do go about, thrice to thine, and thrice to mine, and thrice again to make up nine. Peace, the charms wound up. So the main thing to take away from here is that together they are essentially casting a spell. This is the charm that they're referring to here at the end, that they are using their power, some sort of supernatural ability, to cast a spell as Macbeth is arriving. And so as audience members, we look and we know that this isn't going to end well for anybody. And it's worth noting that as they're casting the spell, the dialogue that we see Macbeth utter, his very first line in the play, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. Now, I would say that this is an important line of dialogue for a few reasons, and this is worth taking some notes on. Number one, it probably jumps out to you that this is immediately echoing the last couple of lines from the witches themselves in scene 1. Fair is foul and foul is fair. And so here Macbeth is echoing that same language of the witches. So foul and fair a day I have not seen. And that kind of alerts us that, this is worth paying attention to right here if he's practically quoting the witches. But the other thing that we need to take into account is what kind of day it is that Macbeth has seen. I don't think that he's just referring to the weather right here. Now, chances are it is probably pretty foggy. The witches seem to have a power over that as well. But consider what Macbeth has been doing this day. He's been fighting a battle. He's been fighting a war. And he's a war that he's almost won single-handedly alongside his compatriot and friend Banquo here. And so on the one hand, it is a fair day. They've won. They've come out victorious. But at the other hand, Macbeth, he's seen some things. He's a soldier, so he has seen death. He has seen destruction. Chances are he's had lots of men, since he is a general, lots of men under him have been killed in this battle, perhaps even close friends as a result. And so there's a real conflict, a real mixing of emotions here from Macbeth, that this is so foul and fair a day. And it tells us something kind of about Macbeth, that as a soldier, yes, he's familiar with death. He sees it regularly, but it's not like he's unaffected by it. He feels it deeply. Okay. So Banquo jumps in, and he's about to say, well, how far is it to wherever we're going? And then they notice the witches. What are these, so withered and wild in their attire that they look like the inhabitants of the earth, that they look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on it? They look like unlike anything that Banquo has seen before. Live you? Or are you aught that man may question? You seem to understand me, by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. He's almost making fun of them, while trying to figure out exactly what they are at the same time. Macbeth obviously is much more direct. He's not nearly as wordy as Banquo is here. Speak if you can, what are you? And then we get an important set of lines from the witches. All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. Like we mentioned in the last video, this is a reference to the title that Macbeth holds. He is the Thane of Glamis. They're just acknowledging what he already is. But the second witch, all hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. Now, important to remember, we know that Duncan is going to award Macbeth with the title Thane of Cawdor and all the riches and land that come with that. But Macbeth doesn't know that yet. He has not received that news. And then the third witch, all hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter. We've already noticed that they seem to have a way of knowing the future in some way, shape, or form, that's indicated. And so we see that there's a graduation of status for Macbeth, from what he is to what he's about to be to king. But wait a second, there already is a king, Duncan. So how is it that Macbeth can become king? That is a question worth asking. And apparently it has affected Macbeth, because Macbeth isn't the one who responds to these prophecies about him. It's his friend Banquo. And we see that he's addressing Macbeth here. Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? Why do you seem like they're saying that you're going to become Thane of Cawdor? That's a promotion. That you're going to be king? Why do you seem to be so afraid of things that seem to sound so good? In the name of truth, are you fantastical, or that indeed which you outwardly show? Now he's jumping back over to the witches. My noble partner you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having and royal hope that he seems rapt withal. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate. Why are you talking to Macbeth? What, do you have anything for me as well? I mean, not that I really care. I'm not really asking for it, but hey, if you got it, let me know. Hail, 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 lesser than Macbeth. Now they're coming at him with riddles. Lesser than Macbeth and greater. Not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. And this is quite really lesser than Macbeth and greater. Well, if Macbeth is supposed to be king, how is it that he is lesser and greater? Not so happy, yet much happier. What does that mean? Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So what do they mean by that? And once again, we see that action is communicated by dialogue. Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. By Sinel's death, I know that I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman, and to be a king stands not within the prospect of belief. I can't really realistically see that becoming a reality. No more to be Thane of Cawdor. Saying from whence you owe these strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Speak, I charge you, but witches vanish. Okay. Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten on the insane root that takes the reason prisoner? They're almost incredulous about actually having seen this. Did we have something weird to eat for breakfast this morning? Were we just seeing things? But notice, Macbeth doesn't really respond to this. It's questioned by Banquo. Instead, he's wrapped up with the prophecy of these witches. He looks straight to Banquo and interprets their words. Your children shall be kings. Banquo, you shall be king. And Thane of Cawdor, too, went it not so, to the self-same tune and words. Who's here? Enter Ross and Angus. All right. And so they, recount the battle again here, but here's the important thing. We are sent to give thee from our royal master thanks, only to herald thee into his sight, not to pay thee. And Ross, and for an earnest of great honor he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor. In addition, hail, most worthy Thane, for it is thine. So one prophecy of the witches is immediately fulfilled within minutes. Banquo, what, can the devil speak true? Banquo gives us some insight into what he really thinks about this. And we'll see this again a little bit later, that he doesn't see the witches acting, let's say, altruistically. He doesn't think that they really have their best interests at heart. Hence the reason he says, the devil. Can the devil speak true? Is it possible? Macbeth, the Thane of Cawdor lives. Why do you dress me in borrowed robes? He's still in disbelief. He's like, well, the Thane of Cawdor is still alive. Why is it that you would award me with this? Well, that's because he's going to be executed. Okay. Macbeth. And here we get a first of a series of asides, which of course are bits of dialogue that no one else on stage can hear. They're just intended for us, the audience, giving some insight into the thought process and inner thinkings of Macbeth. Glamis and Thane of Cawdor, the greatest is behind. And then back to Ross and Angus. Thanks for your pains. Aside to Banquo, Ross and Angus can't hear this. Do you not hope your children shall be kings, when those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them? And now we see the true thinking of Banquo here. That trusted home might yet enkindle you unto the crown, besides the Thane of Cawdor. But 'tis strange, and oftentimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles to betray us in deepest consequence. So let's break this down real quick. He's basically saying, well, yeah, that's right, they did tell you that, and that did happen, but it's strange. I don't trust it. And let's be honest here, most of the time, in order to win us to our harm, in order to ultimately hurt us or injure us in some way, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles. They'll give us little nuggets of things that are true. They will give us little nuggets of things that are actually going to happen. But the end goal is not for our good, but ultimately to take us down. So, that's what he's getting at here. Okay, but let's see. Macbeth, aside, two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. Yes, they said, I'm Thane of Glamis. Yes, they said, I am Thane of Cawdor. That's true, but, they're prologues. They're just the start to the ultimate prophecy, the swelling act of the imperial theme, to be king. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. Now, it's worthy to note that here Macbeth is displaying a lot of internal conflict of what he thinks about this. Cannot be ill, but cannot be good. They're telling me good things, but it seems like it's coming from a bad source. And then he kind of trying to reasons it out here. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? I am the Thane of Cawdor. So how bad can it be if good things are happening to me? But the other shoe has to drop. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? If it's so good, then why are these horrible images popping into my head? Why am I having thoughts and ideas that are disturbing me so deeply? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thought, whose murder is yet but fantastical, shakes so my single state of man that function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not. He is really disturbed to the core by what he is thinking as a result of what the witches have proclaimed about him. Look how our partner's wrapped. Oh, he's so caught up in his own head. Macbeth has a penchant for this, of getting really lost in his own head, getting stuck in his own thoughts. He's continued to think right here, if chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. This is an important thing to note right here, is that he's thinking, well, I didn't do anything to become Thane of Cawdor. It was just pure chance. So what's to say that just pure chance is going to make me king somehow? That if I just sit back, it'll just happen. Come what come may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. Well, I'll just slow play it, see how things work out. Okay. Worthy Macbeth, we stay upon your leisure, but we would like to go now. Give your favor, my dull brain was wrought with things forgotten. Here's an important thing to note, too, is that he doesn't really tell them what he's thinking. Banquo is his best friend, and he has a really bad time, as we'll see, of telling Banquo the truth of what he's thinking. Oh, I'm just reminiscing. I'm a nostalgic type, looking back, thinking on things long past. Okay, but let's turn to the king. All right. But before he goes to Banquo, think upon what hath chanced, and at more time, the interim having waited, let us speak our free hearts to each other. We'll talk about it later. Okay. Scene 4. Flourish. Enter King Duncan, Lennox, Malcolm, Donalbain, and attendants. So once again, basically the king's posse is all together right here. First question, is execution done on Cawdor? Yes. He's died. But, my liege, I have spoke with one that saw him die, who did report that he very frankly confessed his treasons, implored your highness's pardon, and set forth a deep repentance. Nothing in life became him like the leaving it. He died as one that had been studied in death, to throw away a dearest thing he owed, as for a careless trifle. It's interesting to note how the Thane of Cawdor dies right here, and that basically he just confesses to what he did. He doesn't beg for his life, he just asks the king to just casually forgive him, and then just dies as if his life meant nothing. In other words, he throws it away, despite the fact that it is the dearest thing he owned, just like all of our lives are, and just throws it away as if it were a careless trifle. And then we get this important bit from Duncan right here that tells us a lot about what kind of person he is. There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. He was a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust. Duncan saying, you just really can never know what a person's thinking. There's no way that you can look them in the face and truly know what's going on inside their mind, because this person who betrayed him, he says, is a gentleman on whom I built an absolute trust, which kind of tells you something about Duncan, that, you know what, he is maybe not the best at knowing people and knowing their character and who they really are. If somebody who he says he trusted completely could betray him so bald-facedly, and then Duncan at the end of the day just say, well, you just really can never know. All right. Enter Macbeth, Banquo, Ross, and Angus. Essentially, Duncan just lays his congratulations and praise on Macbeth. And Macbeth is just like, well, hey, I just do it because you're my king, and I'm your Thane, and I'm devoted to you. Okay. Duncan turns his attention to Banquo, praises Banquo as well. Banquo reciprocates that also. And then we come to this. Duncan, My plenteous joys, wanton in fullness, seek to hide themselves in drops of sorrow. I'm so happy I could cry. Of course, drops of sorrow being tears. Sons, kinsmen, thanes, and you whose placest are the nearest. And it's interesting to see how certain productions stage this line, as he kind of names all these people who are really close to him. Sons, of course, that's referring to Malcolm, Donalbain. Kinsmen, family who are close to him. Thanes, all these noblemen who are loyal to him. And you whose places are the nearest. Sometimes you'll see this stage that he looks to Macbeth when he refers to those whose places are the nearest, as if Macbeth is the one that he cares about most, because after all, Macbeth basically did just save his throne. No, we will establish our estate. He's naming a successor here. Who's going to be king after him? To our eldest, Malcolm, whom we name hereafter Prince of Cumberland. So, what has Malcolm accomplished to earn this? We can say, probably nothing. In fact, Malcolm was just about to be taken prisoner by the Norwegians. He had to get rescued by somebody else. He couldn't even save himself. What does Macbeth do? He wins the war almost single-handedly. And yet, Duncan, in a moment in which it would seem like Macbeth would be named next in line to the king, in which case, this is what Macbeth would have hoped for. Oh, I just sit back and do nothing and become king all by my own. Instead, no. It's Malcolm who gets named. Prince of Cumberland, which honor must not unaccompanied invest him only, but signs of nobleness like stars shall shine on all deservers. From hence to Inverness, and bind us further to you. All right. Macbeth, well, hey, Inverness, by the way, in Scotland, is where Macbeth resides. It's his land. It's his home. And so he's like, well, I'll ride ahead. I'll let my wife know that you're coming, and we'll make preparations. Now, my worthy Cawdor, Macbeth aside, just for us, insight into his thoughts. The Prince of Cumberland, that is a step on which I must fall down, or else o'erleap, for in my way it lies. Of course, what he's wanting to do is become king, and so now it's not just becoming king, now there's somebody in the way. Malcolm is in the way, so either he has to become Prince of Cumberland himself, or just jump over Malcolm entirely to become king. Stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires. The eye wink at the hand, yet let that be which the eye fears when it is done to see. We're starting to see him peel back the curtain on what his thoughts were that disturbed him so. And see, we get this idea of blackness and darkness overtaking everything. So stars, hide your fires, let it not see my black and deep desires. So now we're recognizing that more than anything else, what Macbeth wants is the throne. He wants the power. He wants the authority. So the eye wink at the hand, let that be which the eye fears. So the eye can look and see what the hand is doing, which probably is nothing good, but let the eye not stare, let it just wink. And then the eye can look when then whatever the hand is going to do is finally done. So, we get the idea that Macbeth is really now plotting nothing good in order to become king. Duncan looks, true, worthy Banquo, he is so valiant, and it is in his commendations that I am fed. It is a banquet to me. Let's after him, whose care is gone before to bid us welcome. It is a peerless kinsman. And thus that is the end of scene 4.